guidance counselor in the West office for students with last names A through K. Tonight we're just doing a senior parent night just to kind of tell you what our process is. So I'll start off with what our process is. Then I'll talk a little bit about the college process, some of the terms, etc. that they use, and a little bit about financial aid, and then I'll talk about college visits. So to get started, it says my parents are going through that cute stage where they think they know more than I do. All right, so the process that we follow, for juniors, we have individual conferences with them in the spring and try to wrap those up by the time they schedule for their senior year so they have a good idea of what to put on their schedule, what they need, that sort of thing. And then we move to senior conferences, which are going on right now. We have information on our guidance webpage. So for example, we have a non-ambiance and college and career planning, and you will find a lot of the information that we're giving to your student right there. For example, the college application guide. It is literally a step-by-step on how to apply to colleges and what our process is. So every student should have received a copy of that, but again, it is also online as well. Students now will use both Common App and Naviance to apply to schools. They'll use Naviance to request letters of recommendation and to request transcripts. So students who are applying through Common Application need to make an account. And you might say, well, what in the world is Common Application? Would my student be using that? Common Application is exactly what it sounds like. It's an application that all the schools that use it have in common. They use the same application. So there's about 1,000, maybe a little more than that, schools that will use Common Application as part of their process. The nice thing about it is they fill out one application and then they can choose the schools that they want it to go to, and it's just that same application that they send to school after school. I mean, there are some exceptions to that. There might be a school that has something extra. When you add that school, something else pops up for them to do. But for the most part, it's the same application. So it can be a real time saver for students. There is a process that students must follow to match their Common App account to Naviance. If they don't do that, counselors cannot do our counsel report, our counsel recommendation, can't send transcripts, etc. So there is a process that they need to follow to match their Common App to their Naviance. That college app guide walks you through that. There's also a video online that walks the students through that. So if you just go to our webpage, go to guidance and find the Naviance, you will see that process. Again, I mentioned the college application guide, which is very, very helpful. There are some questions that the students sometimes just don't know how to answer. For example, it'll say, what is your class size? And they have no reference for that if they don't look at that guide or talk to their counselor. So that information is on there. It tells them how to answer the question about rank, since we are not ranking for the first time. How to answer what is your GPA scale. All those things are in that packet, and it just kind of step by step. So I tell my students, have that packet with you when you're working on Common Application. It'll answer a lot of your questions and take out some of your frustration that you don't know something when you need it. Again, teachers, letters of rec, that is requested through Naviance, not through Common App. I think this year, Common App has like a little notification saying your school matches with Naviance or something, I do believe. But students do need to go to Naviance, and we have that process also written out for them. They go to their school, to the schools or colleges tab, letters of recommendation, and add a recommender, and a pop-up list of all the teachers in the school shows up for them. They pick the teachers and assign them.
If the student has a potential recommender from internship or outside of school, is there a way to?
So what I would recommend in that case is that they would have to use Common App, and that recommender would have to have a Common App account as an other recommender. We have done that, but we've run into some snags. Our students in the engineering block wanted to use Mr. Stacy, who retired last year. and he doesn't have a Naviance account anymore, right? So my suggestion was, well, just go to Common App. Since they're not a teacher in our building, you can use through Common App. Well, some schools like Ohio State won't take another recommender. So they weren't able to do it for certain schools, and others it did work. So that's what I would suggest. You just have to see if it'll work with that school. For any students who are working with NCAA or think they might be playing NCAA Division I or II, we tell them you request a transcript also through Naviance, so they have to have an NCAA account. Once they have that account established, then they request a transcript through Naviance as well. When they do ask a teacher to write a letter of recommendation, we definitely recommend you speak to the teacher before you add them into Naviance, because Naviance will send an immediate notification to the teacher. So you need to have the student talk to the teacher first. Then teachers typically you might hear kids talk about a brag sheet. We do have some forms around that are brag sheets, which are basically more open-ended than a resume, but usually teachers will accept either a resume or some sort of brag sheet. So it just talks about what they've done as far as volunteer work, clubs, sports, what their goals might be, those sorts of things, just to help teachers to write a better letter. And as guidance counselors, we've been collecting at the junior and senior year, we collect information as well to use in our letters of rec. Again, they request it through Naviance. We don't use Common App. And students can actually see the status in Naviance. They can see if a teacher has submitted the letter of rec. They can see if their counselor has submitted the transcript. It's actually called a school report. And they can see if we've done our CR or our counselor recommendation as well. So they can keep up. So if they're feeling nervous, go check your Naviance account. You'll be able to see all of that right there. I tell students, you submit your application whenever you are ready, and of course, meet your deadline. Counselors will submit whenever we are ready, but we are working to meet your deadline. So, for example, I've already submitted a few, and they aren't due until maybe October 15th. This is the soonest the college is supposed to ask for anything, or maybe like November 1st. So what happens is whenever that student does submit their application, then the school will pull my information to match, or whoever the counselor is. So that's kind of how that works. So we're not trying to hit the submit button at the same time. We don't have to wait on each other at all. We're just trying to be in front of that deadline. Same for the teacher letters of rec. Not all schools might require an essay. Common App does have an essay, but then there are some schools that require multiple. So again, as they're working through the application, if there's anything extra that they have to do for that school, or because they've chosen an honors college or something like that, it'll all show up in Common App so that they know if they have something extra that they have to do. Some of the more elite schools have extra essays and that sort of thing. All right, so that's pretty much the process that we follow here at school. Now I'm going to move on to a little bit about college admissions. So these are the choices that your student makes in Common Application as they pick their school. They're deciding whether they will go regular decision. Regular decision, typically the application is not due until probably January or maybe even February. So for most students, not for all, but for most students, I tell them I wouldn't wait for regular decision. There would have to be some strategy and reason behind that. It's such a late application, and you're finding out so late whether or not you get into the school. So in most cases, I wouldn't suggest that, but in some I will, and I'll go on to explain that as I talk about the other decisions. Rolling admission, those are universities that just consider the student as they apply. So they apply, I don't know if there's a week, 2 weeks turnaround, and the student learns of the decision. Typically, if a school is rolling admissions, they're not super competitive, so they're not worried about filling up, running out of space for students. Early action or priority is what I tell most students to do. Early action is tied directly with merit scholarships. And I will show you a couple of charts on merit scholarships here in a bit. So it depends on the school where that merit starts. Some schools might be a 3.0, some might be a 3.2, some might be a 3.5, and there may be others out there as well. So when your student is trying to decide when should I apply, if their GPA meets that merit standard, they must apply early action. They must, or they'll be losing money or potentially losing money. So it makes sense for them to apply early action. Early action is not binding. Early action, you can do as many early actions as you want. So every single school will be early action if they offer that. Typically, early action is November 1, sometimes December 1. So, for example, UD is 1101, Ohio State 1101. Miami has 2, but they highly encourage the 1101, and I think it's a 1201 too. UC is 1201. I want to say OU is 1101. Wright State may not say it on their application, but they encourage 1101 just because you don't want them to run out of money if there's a merit scholarship. Early decision is binding. So you can only do, or your student can only do, one early decision. Now they do have early decision 2s, and you can do an early decision 1, early decision 2. Early decision should only be done if that is the school of your dreams, and you will go there if you are accepted, period. Because it's binding. And so what they say is, if you are accepted by your early decision school, you must withdraw all of your other applications, and you cannot send any more transcripts. It's binding. Then in the fine print they say, unless you were seeking financial aid, and then you don't have to. I don't know what that process looks like. I had one student do that, but I was kind of on the, he was graduated and gone, so I really didn't get to follow the process. I just know he didn't end up at his early decision school. So it had something to do with finances, but I don't know how much effort it took to get out of that agreement. So early decision is rare. I probably have maybe 1 or 2 students that do that a year. Sometimes I don't have any at all. So that's just, remember that decision is binding, but action just means you're getting in on it quickly. All right, I don't even want to talk about this next subject. It is so confusing, but I'll do it anyway. Testing terms. Okay, so y'all probably know that before COVID, it was not unusual at all for schools to ask for an ACT or an SAT. Most of them did, and most of them used it to consider college admissions. And then along came COVID, and test sites shut down. And some places were, I think I used to give the SAT, I missed 1 SAT, that was it. All the other ones I was open for. But a lot of schools, it took forever. They didn't have one at all. There were just nightmare stories about it. So colleges had to regroup and say, okay, what are we going to do? We can't really require something if students didn't have an opportunity to take a test. So many of them became test optional. And many of them have decided to stay that way indefinitely. Many have decided to stay that way, I guess, from now on. So, test optional means they will accept the ACT or SAT, but it is not required. Test blind, if you happen to see that term, means they will not consider test scores for many students. Then we have test flexible. They're generally test optional, but they put limitations without test scores, like maybe you don't have to have a test score if you have this GPA, that kind of thing. And then some universities are just, I don't know, they're making up their own little rules as they go. So, you must check the university before you make decisions about whether or not you're going to use test scores. So in the state of Ohio, I recently attended articulation. I think there's 13 public universities, and all 13 are test optional. They are not using test scores for merit scholarships. You do not have a test score to be considered for admissions, and it does not hurt you to not use the test score. There are programs, though, that do require test scores. Most of those are medical, and nursing is a big one. So when your student is considering whether or not to use a test score, just keep all of those things in mind, and you really do have to look at each university, knowing that to get into most universities in the state of Ohio, you don't need that test score, but there might be a program where you do. Yeah, and some universities will require a test score for certain scholarships. Now, our publics, all of them said no, not this year. Private universities, there's a bunch of them, and they don't all get a chance to speak, and so you don't really get like as much information. But I can tell you there are 4 private universities in Ohio that require the test scores. That's Altman College, Huron College, Tiffin University, and Union Institute and University. Those are the 4 that require a test score. All the other private schools do not, unless maybe it's for a particular program. So now I want to show you, I'm going to show you a couple of different schools and what they do with merit. What ended up happening with merit scholarships, and I can especially speak for Miami, I went to their little breakfast and kind of heard their spiel for the last couple of years and kind of watched this. When test scores were a factor, Miami started at a 26 on the ACT. They started at a 26 on the ACT. Their GPA was a 3.5, and the higher the test score, the higher your merit money, but the GPA stayed at 3.5, 3.5, 3.5 all the way. So this is kind of what has happened to those scales when they took out test scores. This is Miami's, and don't get too excited and look at the non-resident. We're residents over here. So you can see how they have just taken the GPA and just staggered it, and the higher your GPA, the more money that you have the potential of earning. Just by applying early, that's it, early action. However, one second, this is guaranteed at Miami. Every school doesn't guarantee it, Miami does. So what's happened is the top tier used to read half to full tuition, and now it reads starting at $4,000. So what has happened is because more kids meet the GPA than did the test, they started giving away too much money. They were running out of money. So in the last couple of years, I've seen that number dwindle. Yes, you had a question?
The report cards that the kids get, are they the weighted ones or are they the non?
Miami uses weighted. So you can see it says weighted high school. Yeah, we always use weighted.
Is it possible to have both?
Not on one of our documents, but they can ask what the unweighted is. Yeah. Okay, so this is Miami, and like I said, Miami guarantees it. Not all schools do. Some schools just put everybody that would qualify, I don't know how they do it, in a pile and kick the ones again. I'm not sure how. All right, the next school, go big blue, is University of Kentucky. And this is what they do, which is different from any school that I've seen so far, but I mostly look at Ohio schools and then just some of our more popular ones outside of Ohio. So you can see if a student comes in with a 3.0, and notice that is unweighted. So they unweight the GPAs. So if they come in with a 3.0, they get $5,000 just for applying by December 1. But then look what they do from there. They say, well, if you have a 3.5, we'll give you $8,000. But if you only have a 3.0, if you have a 25 on your ACT or 1,200 on your SAT, that'll get you that $8,000. And then you move down. But if you have a 3.6, we'll give you 10. But if you only have a 3.5, as long as you have 25 on your ACT or 1,200 on your SAT, we'll give you 10. So you see how that works? So that's why I'm telling the kids, look at each school to see, would it benefit me to use my ACT score? I'm going to speak really frankly to you right now. Ohio State, a 25 wouldn't do for you what it does at UK, right? It just wouldn't. So you're looking at schools school by school and trying to decide, will I use my test score? Is there any benefit to it? Or in some cases, maybe I have to have it. And then you'll see the next two are competitive. So those are ones that you have to apply for. I just kind of wanted to show you what the differences look like, but you can look at each school. Not every school has a chart that's so helpful, so that's kind of why I use Miami's every year, because they have a lovely chart that's really easy to find. What I do is I go to the university's website, I use their search engine, and just put like merit scholarships in their search engine, and that's been typically the easiest way to find it. All right, so here we talked about there's merit-based, which is based on your GPA, maybe test scores. You can get financial aid through athletic talent, NCAA, Division I, II, NAIA, maybe talents through music or art, where students have to go and perform. There are need-based grants, both federal and state aid, federal student loans, work study, parent loans, and student loans. Says, your mother and I have saved enough money to send you to any college you like. Would you prefer train or bus? All right, other scholarships you can look through employers, maybe through a parent, a student, a grandparent, religious affiliations, civic organizations, maybe Boy Scouts or juvenile diabetes. You guys should have gotten an email about the Parent Square where we load scholarships that we hear about and share out. The parents of seniors should have gotten that. There was a Join Now button. I think I've gotten like 3 emails from that.
Yeah, it was.
Okay. I know it worked for some and not for others. I think Ms. Stingley said that she got some emails and she pushed the Join Now button. If you can't find the Join Now button, if you email Ms. Stingley, she will take care of that for you. I think, did you guys try the link on our webpage too? I believe there's a link there now to Parent Square on our webpage. I checked that before this meeting to make sure I knew what I was saying. And I saw something there, but because I didn't try the link because I had already joined, so you could try that as well. We have local scholarships. Those come out pretty late, end of February, beginning of March. Those are organizations and businesses in our area that are kind enough to give scholarships out to our students. And they can apply for those. Usually the applications are online, and then they turn in the application to their guidance counselor, we turn it in where it goes. There are a lot of online ways to search for scholarships, and of course the biggest thing is never use a credit card for any of that. If they're trying to charge you, run. So fastweb.com is one that I tell students about. They do have to start an account with them. They will ask them questions. They're just trying to match the student with scholarships that would work for them. So, you know, grades, GPA, test scores, what do you want to study, ethnicity, like all kinds of things like that, simply to try to match the best they can the scholarships to the student. You all may have heard that FAFSA is changing. I went to the website the other day, and I don't know why I was thinking, oh, it's probably shut down now. I don't think it is, but and maybe that's for current students that have to use it right now. But for us, for our 12th graders, it's going to be new and improved. So I've heard. I don't really know. And it's going to be open sometime in December. And the last I heard, sometime in December is all we know. So we're shooting for a meeting on December 4th at 7 o'clock. I believe it's right here, where Mr. Delator holds that meeting. He brings someone in from a university that is well versed on FAFSA and can help you out with that. I believe you still need the FAFSA ID. You can still use taxes from the previous year. And I think they changed the wording to an SRA. Well, I don't think that. I know they have. SRA, a student aid report, instead of that EFC, expected family contribution. I think it literally is just a change in terms. It still means we expect you to pay this much. If you think that you want some help with the FAFSA completion, Sinclair will announce some meetings that they will hold where you can come in if you feel like you need a little bit of help with that. It used to be that males 18 or older had to have selective service completed. I read something about that. That might be changing. I'm not sure because the information just isn't out there yet. If your student is planning to use that Sinclair Tech Prep Scholarship, in order for them to be able to use it, you have to do the FAFSA. And just watch financial deadlines at the schools. I know, colleges are a little bit frustrated because of this change. It kind of puts them out of whack a little bit too. When FAFSA opened up in October, I don't think they necessarily were able to give the financial aid package to those November ones and December ones, but there'll probably be a delay this year, unfortunately. Just in case you need more help with FAFSA, this is what I have for you. You need to apply for student loans so you can go to college and get a good job to pay off your student loans. That's, I think, how it works. All right, this slide is, when I went to articulation, they had like a special financial aid meeting. I didn't get to attend that because I was busy with the 2- and 4-year schools, but I did find this slide. These are just different types of financial aid that are available. So I figured if you had to list, if any of those look like they might be something you were interested in, you could look up the names of those scholarships and kind of see what they are about. All right, so here at Centerville High School, we have colleges. They love to come in. They love to recruit your students because we have a great bunch of students here. So these are schools that have been coming and will continue to come. We'll have more visits in October and I believe a few in November. Now these are for students only, but you can see that it's during the school day, so we have passes down in our office. They can come and get a pass. Just let the teacher know there's class they're going to miss. They sign that pass. They go up to typically to the library. I left off the room so you could actually read this tonight. And just listen, ask questions. If a school comes in like, a Rose Holman or something like that, that's pretty competitive, I definitely encourage the students to go. Typically the person who's holding this meeting is also the one in charge of our region, so they could be reading the applications and maybe have a face and a name. Plus it just shows another time that they come and said, I'm interested in your school. This is just information for regional college fairs, if you're interested in that. I love the name, the Spooky New Look, Sports Champion, though, it's hard to say. But that is a college fair for the regionals that's going on down in Miami. And then this was a big one at the Dare Ballpark. It's Wednesday, September 27th. More than 70 colleges and universities are there. You can pre-register to win one of $2,000 scholarships. And then I just put the website there in case I don't know, I had a little trouble Googling it this time. I did a little looking, so that's where I found it. It says, I want to go out of town so that I can become a fully independent person, but near enough so that I can bring my laundry home. Been there, done that. All right, these are some resources that are online so that you can see like kind of a little at a glance for the colleges and universities. I miss the paper copies so much, but they're trying to get away from that, so I think I have one for the private, but not for the public universities. But it just gives a snapshot, like what's your average ACT and SAT, all the way down to what's the tuition, room and board, all those types of things. And then there's also at the beginning of each one of these, well, they used to be books, just like who needs test scores, who super scores, like all those types of questions, so you can kind of look at a glance. It's just helpful. And then College Scorecard might be another helpful website. So when your students are making the final decision, sometimes if you get to visit again, that's a good thing. We want them to be happy where they're going. We encourage them to take school visits during our school day. We have forms for that, and they've done that some their junior year as well. But you want them to like where they're going to be. Just comparing pros and cons, we've given the students, if they wanted it, like a little sheet to kind of keep track of those things. Don't hesitate when they know on those housing deposits. May 1st is the deadline, so that's when they tell the school that they're attending and make their deposit. And then this is something I didn't know until this year. Once a student says, this is where I'm going, they pay their deposit, they hear from the school that says, please send us your ACT or SAT score. And they're like, do what now? Didn't think you needed that. So they are asking for that in lieu of taking placement tests for English and for math. So if your student gets that request, don't panic, that's what they want it for. If for whatever reason don't want to send the ACT or SAT, then you have to sit for those placement tests, and you have to do that before they will have your orientation meeting and let the student pick their classes. All right, your mother and I need more time to save for your college education. We'd like you to go back to kindergarten. Start it. I know y'all. Like, you can keep a maybe one more year and after that. All right, or you can do this. We've decided to support you for the rest of your life. It's cheaper than sending you to college.